We have Chimene with us today. She is originally from the music label world, worked with the producers, songwriters, artists, and then jumped to the influencer marketing world, specifically for also the music industry and, working with a lot of TikTok creators. And now she's running her own agency. So that's kind of what we're going to touch on. Music, how to distribute it on TikTok, the new trends, what's happening with Universals when they removed all the songs, and a lot more. So let's get started.
The night where we talked earlier in our intro chat, you talked a lot about like the music industry. I mean, that's obviously your background.
Yeah.
And I also saw one of your recent posts about how, is it Universal? Just
Universal Music put it down. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to, hear your view on that and kind of the future on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me a little bit more. Yeah, what do you think?
Go on. What were you going to say?
No, tell me a bit more just about kind of your experience from the music industry and TikTok, just for listeners to kind of get an understanding of.
I've actually been thinking a lot about the music industry today because I was thinking about, I posted something on my Instagram about like SoundCloud and missing SoundCloud and just like how amazing it was for artists and listeners and just everything and just like innovation and new music. And I was just thinking, I miss those days so much. And like the big record labels just fucked up SoundCloud because the record labels just want to monetize from everything. And like, we don't have to monetize from everything. Like sometimes we can just let music be and let it grow and let there be a platform that isn't being monetized. And then they did a deal with SoundCloud and then SoundCloud started running ads or you had to pay to subscribe. And then just no one did that because like that kind of audience doesn't want to subscribe and they don't want to pay because they were used to consuming free music. And it just completely it ruined all the blogs. Like blogs didn't exist anymore because blogs were running on SoundCloud basically. It just ruined like music discovering. And even now I'm like, how do people discover music apart from on TikTok? That's not the same as the way like when I used to go to work every single morning, I would start over my computer and I spend the first half an hour to an hour just going through blogs like every single day, like all the blogs like Complex, Hype Machine, whatever. And it was just such a good time. It was just such a good time. And the labels had to fuck it up. And then that kind of relates back to TikTok and Universal removing all their music from it. And it's kind of the same sentiment. It's like sometimes things can just be a marketing platform and a way that artists can grow in other places without having to monetize on that specific platform. And it's, I don't know, I think it's a bit disappointing because I was on two sides of the fence. No, I was on, what's the say? I can't speak English anymore.
You kind of see.
I was on both. Yeah, I was on both sides of the fence at the time when this happened. And I was like, look, when I was in music, I was always advocating for songwriters, especially songwriters, because I was a songwriter, producer, manager, songwriter, producer, A&R, more than artist A&R. And I was always advocating for songwriters to be getting paid properly because there's a much, much, much bigger conversation, but songwriters don't get paid enough for what they do. The deals with like Spotify and Apple Music, etc., are just really bad when it comes to publishing and songwriters. So I'm always advocating for people to get paid fairly. But they also need to see that, like I just said, you don't have to monetize every single platform. Like TikTok is an amazing place for people to blow up. And even if they're signed to a label and they're just bubbling and they're a new artist, like TikTok can completely change their lives. And like, we don't have to monetize of everything. It's just, I do actually think in the beginning when this came out, I was like, yeah, fair enough. Like they should be getting paid more. And now it's been like a week or so and I've moved completely towards, no, I think this is being greedy. Like we don't and I think it's very short-sighted. And like I said, like it's helping artists grow in a way that they never have before and like grow really quickly in a way that they never have before. And like all the other record labels can obviously see that and they've done their deals with TikTok and they're happy with their deals and just Universal have to come in and be like, no, this isn't enough. And they're saying they're advocating for their songwriters and their artists, but the songwriters and artists didn't even know this was happening. And, this is a dictatorship. This isn't a democracy. Maybe ask your writers and your artists what they think about it and take a poll and then make a decision. But like the artists were blindsided. People had stuff, music that was going viral or starting to go viral, could have changed their life, and then suddenly it gets pulled down the next week and they're like, now what? Like, what do I do? And so I just think I think there will be a deal done in like 2 weeks. I think like there has to be like on Universal side and TikTok side, there has to be a deal that has to be done. And I said on that video that I posted that it doesn't it's not just Universal Music as in Universal Records that's putting their catalog down. It's Universal Publishing as well. And what a publisher does is they look after not only artists, but also songwriters and producers, people that have basically composed the songs. So say 5 people have written a song, one of those people is signed to Universal Publishing, they can then basically put a claim in to pull down that song. So that's not just Universal Catalog, that means Warner Catalog, Sony Catalog, independents as well. And that's just going to completely mess up everyone's business. So I think there's going to be they're just going to be rioting if they don't fix it. So my prediction is give it a couple of weeks and it will be fixed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think it just needs to be treated as a marketing platform. Like I said, we don't have to monetize every single thing. And I take that approach as a manager as well, just generally across the board, because I'm a talent manager for influencers. And I see like a lot of managers, because I come from the music industry, I'm used to managing in a completely different way. And I've been a manager in music forever. And so I've come into this industry just knowing that. And, you know, the influencer industry is a very new industry and the music industry is a very old industry. So we've kind of learned what works and what doesn't and how to manage. And, you know, it's the way that I take the approach is, I guess, a bit different to a lot of influencer management companies where they're just kind of doing more transactional deals and they're just like brand deal. Whereas with us, we're like, okay, like let's take a 360 approach here. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Let's figure out how we get you there. Let's figure out how we diversify your income streams. Let's figure out, like, do you want to start, I don't know, do you want to build your own product? What do you want to do? Like, for example, I look after someone who I hope she doesn't mind me speaking about her, but she's a music journalist and she's amazing. She was my first client and I'm obsessed with her and her content. And we don't make money on brand deals. We do a couple of things here and there, but that's not how we make our money. Like she talks about artists, she talks about music, she works with labels to promote music, but only things that she actually really loves. She interviews artists, she DJs, with launching a podcast this week. So it's not that traditional model of like I said, just brand deal. It's like, how are we actually taking what you're doing and how are we creating something bigger? How are we creating a universe around you? And how are we creating something that can translate into the tangible world as well and isn't just reliant on social media? Because, for example, with her, she posts about so much music and now suddenly Universal pulled down all their catalogue and a lot of her videos have been muted and she can't post a lot of stuff she would have wanted to post. But because she has such a diverse... Sorry, cat's got zoomies. Because she has such a diverse stream of income, it doesn't affect her that much and it doesn't affect her business that much and she's doing things elsewhere. And the reason I say this is because we're not always talking about like, how can we monetize quickly? Sometimes you do things that are not paid, but it's for the bigger picture. And that's what, and the reason I said that again is tying back into this conversation about Universal and TikTok. And it's like, we don't have to be paid for everything because, you know, something goes viral on TikTok, that means that artist is suddenly streaming way more. They've got a gigantic profile. They're selling more tickets. And that's why they're making the money anyway. They're not making the money. They're making way more money on live, for example, than they are on their actual music anyway. So we need to like look at the bigger picture.
I agree. Like, I think TikTok should be considered like a marketing channel.
Yeah.
And they're actually getting paid to get all that reach. Right?
Exactly.
Like maybe not the best payment compared to, I don't know, Spotify or festivals or whatever, but it's actually a channel that can get huge, you know, reach.
Exactly. And also, I was going to say also, if that's your energy that you're going to put towards TikTok, go and take that energy to Spotify and go and fight for your songwriters to be paid properly because songwriters can't even live off of the money they're making from Spotify. So let's start with that one first, the one that's more of a problem because we're pointing everyone to Spotify from TikTok, and then I feel really passionate about this. And then those people are not making enough money, so fix that problem first. It's ridiculous.
But I think like all the labels, I think even your creators, everyone wants to not be dependent on one platform. I think that's also one thing to think about. So I think Universal pushing a little bit pressure on TikTok, sure, but I think they also should like maybe we should find other channels too. Maybe we should. You know, and it's the same with creators. I don't think they like you said, that if they want to release a book or do DJ, and all that is because they don't want to be dependent on only Instagram reels post or whatever it is.
Exactly, because like the algorithm can change, and then you can stop. People stop receiving your content, they stop consuming your content, and then what? What are you going to do? Like I've seen people with multiple millions of followers who kind of stop posting as much as they used to post, and then suddenly they've lost their audience, and suddenly now they're posting a video, they're getting like 2,000 views on it, and suddenly you've lost your whole business. So you have to build something that can kind of outlive anything that can change on social media. And also social media trends come and go, right? So like, platforms come and go. Some platforms aren't as popular as they were before, and they keep changing. So it's like you must diversify what you're doing and make sure you're touching all these different platforms. It doesn't have to be every single one, but it should be at least 2, if not 3. And like I said, like creating something that's more tangible in real life. And like another example is I have a creator who's built a really great following of doing interviews in the street in London. And we only started working with him about a month ago, and we said, like, what are your ambitions? And he goes, I want to present. So now we're talking about him presenting for other platforms or like in-person things, like whether it's we're talking about sports, we're talking about music, like various different things that we're exploring that just, again, like grows his universe and doesn't just have him stuck to what's going on in his TikTok and his Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to, with your experience from the labels connected to TikTok, I guess TikTok is still the number 1 platform to push out your music. If TikTok will disappear, or for some reason the labels won't make a deal with that, whatever happens with TikTok, could you do the same type of push out or campaigns with Reels and YouTube Short, or what's the difference? Would you say, like?
Music doesn't go as viral on Instagram and on YouTube as it does on TikTok, and TikTok has completely changed the way that we consume music, and it's actually the reason I quit music after, which is kind of crazy. So I was kind of like, can't beat them, join them. But I genuinely quit music because of TikTok, and all I wanted to do since I was 14 years old was be an A&R, and I was working at Sony Music, the best publishing company you can work at. I was working with some of the biggest artists you could possibly work with, like Labyrinth, Georgia Smith, Little Mix, amazing songwriters and producers. And I just not overnight, it took time, but it seemed overnight to other people, just quit my job. And everyone was very confused about why I would do that. And it was pretty much because of TikTok. It was because back in the day when I started in the music industry, we didn't have social media like that. Facebook was like just becoming a thing, but it was, we didn't have TikTok. Instagram had just started. Sorry, Facebook was established. Instagram was just becoming a thing. It was all very new. You did not promote your music on social media, and the record labels and the radio stations and the press, like they were the gatekeepers to music. So now that, obviously like having SoundCloud helped expand things, having Instagram grow helped expand things. But with TikTok, the way that people just go viral overnight has never happened before. Not in the way that it is on TikTok anyway. And that has taken the control away from the music industry, which is great for the artist. But when you're with me, it's really difficult because you can't predict what's going to do well. When I started in music, we would sign artists. Every single artist that I worked with did well, was in the top 10, top 5, number 1, genuinely, because we signed them and then we, place them in the right places, radio, press.
You control the distribution.
We controlled all of it. And now you have no control over anything. You don't know what's going to do well. Random things go viral. It's just so difficult. And a lot of the music industry, the bosses are basically expecting the staff to go and sign those things that are going viral. And I was like, I didn't get into the industry for this. Like I got into it because I love developing songwriters, producers, artists, and really working with them and building something and being part of something. So I just was kind of over the music industry and that model, and I just didn't see there being any change. But to go back to your point about what would you do without TikTok and using other platforms, it would just be going back to the way it was, honestly. Which is for the music industry better, for the rest of the people probably not. But actually I say that I think now with like all of this catalog off TikTok, there's space for independent artists to really grow and shine. And maybe like this is the new SoundCloud for now, unless they do a deal and then all the catalog comes back. Where say it doesn't, I think artists should really take advantage of what's going on right now and start pushing their music because there's space. And like people want to hear the new music and they want to they want to promote it. But the thing is, like, because, and I don't know how much you know about like influencer marketing in the music space, but there are loads of influencer marketing agencies that promote music. And there's, I think there's like 4, 5, 6 of them and I used to work at one. And the labels are paying those agencies, all the labels are doing it themselves in-house to then work with creators and pay creators to use their music in their videos. So they're trying to create virality, and not just virality, but also just having that music in front of as many eyes as possible. So in the hope that it will go viral. And that's kind of what labels' whole marketing plans has been over the last, couple years. And so I think it's a time that like they kind of needed a bit of a wake up call, and they needed to realize that you also just can't rely on TikTok. Like you need to go back to being like, how can we be smart on Instagram? How can we be smart on even Twitch? YouTube, obviously Snapchat. Like I don't think people are utilizing Snapchat enough, and it's such a gigantic platform. I don't think brands are utilizing Snapchat enough either. Music definitely should be. And now I think they're going to have to be a bit more creative with how they're promoting music. And sorry, to actually go back to what I was saying before about there being space for new artists, because now like all these marketing agencies are no longer promoting and pushing all this music from signed artists to influencers and creators. It now means there's space for the smaller artists, the independent artists, to be seen, and for those creators to use their music because they're not being paid every second video to promote a song. So I think it's going to be it's going to be very interesting. I still think that there'll be a deal done in the next few weeks and it will go back to normal, but it would be very interesting to see if that doesn't happen, what happens next and how that does actually benefit smaller artists.
So how would you, what's your knowledge around Snapchat? Like,
Snapchat
is that possible to use for?
Yeah, it's a huge platform. I can't remember the exact demographics. It's a much younger demographic. I think it's more kind of teens, early 20s. But everyone that I know, which is not that many people in the early 20s, they communicate on Snapchat. If you don't take someone's number, you take their snap. They don't use WhatsApp as much because they're all communicating on Snap. And then living on this platform, like I have some little nieces who are I think 11 and 13, and they live in Canada, and I was with them in the summer, and they were like, well, how can we keep talking? Like, how can I contact you? And I was like, oh, add me on Instagram. And they were like, we don't have Instagram. Like, we use Snap. Like, they were like, you get Snap so we can talk. Like, they literally live on there. So we really need to like start thinking about that generation a bit more when it comes to music marketing, if that's what we're talking about, and start paying creators on Snapchat to promote your music, because it's a gigantic ecosystem that I think, and maybe people are, but from my experience, I work with every single record label, I work with every single music marketing company, and no one's ever come to me and said, let's do Snapchat. Everyone is always TikTok. Now in the last week, they're trying to go to Instagram Reels, talking about YouTube Shorts, other platforms, but still no one said Snap. And I think that's really interesting. And I don't know if something can go viral on Snap the same way it can on TikTok, but I think that it is a really viable platform to be promoting music on.
Yeah, I think from my experience, I think let's say if you're super big on TikTok or Instagram, you have like millions of followers. If you also have a Snapchat, but with only, let's say 10K followers.
Yeah.
I would suggest to test that audience, because those 10K followers are probably the most loyal. Yeah,
exactly.
Those are the most loyal. So maybe you should go for that. And it's probably a lot cheaper too.
Exactly. And also, it will be a lot cheaper to use creators on there because people aren't really doing it. And secondly, just outside of all of that, Snap's just a great platform to be on anyway, because it's an amazing place to monetize. And their monetization scheme is incredible and so much better than any of the other platforms. So I think people need to be looking towards Snapchat a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. But tell me a little bit more, you work as an agent manager and you have 10 plus creators in your kind of management. How, like, if you're a brand, like, how do you think people should approach the whole, because I hear like sometimes they feel like, oh, I just want to talk directly with the influencer. I don't care about the middle person.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go directly build relationships. And some other brands, they say, oh, it's nice to have an agent because it's professional, negotiate easy. Like, it's like business straightforward. But what's your approach around that? Like, how do you think brands should approach you guys?
I think there's two sides. And again, like I understand why a brand would want to go straight to a creator because it's going to be cheaper for them because the creator might not be as savvy on rates and, you know, additional terms for usage, etc. And so obviously, yeah, I would want to do that too. If I was going to go straight to the creator, because it's going to be cheaper for me. But then, like you said, on the other side, you have someone with a manager and they just, you know, they understand the business side, they can get things done, they can manage the creator to get that content made. They can make sure that, like, if they're a good manager, that you're not going back with a million different drafts and they just nail something great immediately. And I come from after the music industry, I went to work at influencer marketing agency and, you know, really learn how to make great content that makes people want to listen to something or buy something or do something or whatever it is. And so with our company, we really make sure that we're brainstorming with our creators. We're not just giving them the brief and be like, be free, go make your content. And I'll just be the middle person and I'll send it back to the brand or the agency. No, like we will speak to them and be like, okay, let's think of a great idea for this, especially if it's a branding. The music campaigns are a bit easier, but especially when the brands have, it's like, let's think of something super smart because firstly, it's going to make the brand want to work with us more if we can create some great content that really engages people and really converts. And I do see a lot of creators be really lazy with their content and they don't really think about how they can make something amazing and like build a longer term relationship. Because yeah, you can get a brand deal and you can get paid for your brand deal, but then if you're not converting, they're not going to come back to you. Or if you're not getting great views or engagement, so like let's be smart about that. And I think if a brand is going straight to a creator, from what I see, some creators are great at it, but a lot of them are not, and they will create something quite lazy. So that's I think a very important reason to have a great manager anyway, because I know a lot of managers also just act as a middle person. They'll just pass on the brief and then they'll take the content and they'll pass it back without really like touching it or helping make it great. But I do think that, and I've been having this conversation recently and we spoke about this the other day, that I find it really interesting because coming from the music industry, especially in A&R, which is what I did, everything is about meeting people in person. Like we didn't like doing calls. We never did phone calls. And even if it was like, there's people in America, cool, we'll fly to LA and we'll be there for 2 weeks and we'll go meet everyone. It's such an in-person and like a relationship industry and like really knowing people. And it's obviously, it's a much smaller industry, I think, than the influencer industry, but still it's very much built on relationships. And we made amazing things happen because of those relationships and genuinely being friends with people. And I'm finding, you know, getting into this industry that people don't really want to like meet in person. They're not that, in the music industry, everyone's very big on networking. Like it's, your black book is everything to you. So like we're all very into networking and expanding our networks and, expanding that contact base. Whereas again, from my experience so far in this industry, and it hasn't been that long, I'm just finding people don't want to meet as much. They don't want to chat as much. They just kind of want to be a bit more transactional. And again, I don't know if it's just because it's a newer industry and that's just how they're used to doing it. But I think there's so much value in like hang out with the managers, like invite them to your office, go for coffee, invite if you're working with whatever 5 influencers through a manager, hang out with the influencers too, like build an actual relationship with them. And I said this to you the other day, and I think agencies and brands, what they're really missing on is like creating that relationship with the manager. And like, think about like, if you're sending product to the influencer, send it to the manager as well, because they're just going to feel special. They're going to like you more. They're probably going to do a better deal for you. You probably get that their creators for cheaper because they like you and you've created this relationship where they actually feel like they're being seen. Because I think a lot of the time the manager doesn't feel seen. They feel like they are just that transactional in-between person. And it's like, no, like if you build a good relationship with them and like, if you're inviting the creator to a thing, invite the manager. And I'm not saying this, like invite me to stuff, send me 3 things. But just from a psychological perspective of me, when I've been in an agency, for example, like sometimes I do some kind of ad hoc influencer marketing things or like, working with companies to get influencers to certain events. And I was working with this big department store last London Fashion Week and they were throwing this big party. So I reached out to like loads of different people. They wanted creators, they wanted creatives, they just wanted some like cool, interesting people there. So I was reaching out to, I think I reached out to like whatever 7, 8 influencer management companies to invite their clients. But then I also said to the managers, and this is for you as well. And they were really confused. They're like, what, you're inviting me to this Fashion Week party? And I was like, yeah, like I want you to come. And like, you come, and if you want to bring your clients, fine. But actually my initial invite was to them and anyone on their team that wanted to come. And they were so everyone was just like confused and shocked. And they're like, no, but which client do you want? I was like, no, I'm inviting you to come to this thing. And I just think like if you build those relationships, you're just going to get so much more out of people. And I think these people at brands and agencies just try it out and see what happens and see like how far it can go. Just like being a bit nicer to the managers, making them feel a bit special.
I agree. I think many brands, or in general, people just forget that the constellation of like the creator and an agent, like the agent is the business side, the creator is the creative side. You know, they two need to, you know, work together. That's why you're basically paying for the package. You know, not only the creator. So in a way, it's a team. You need to.
Yeah. And it's important to make the relationships with the creator as well. And I always like, I'm, you know, if I am doing a deal with like a brand or a record label or whatever it is, like I will most of the time try and push for them to meet the creator, to like meet for coffee, to get on a call, or like some, you know, I've got some creators that, the guy I mentioned earlier who does music stuff, like I will, whenever I'm speaking to a record label or anyone she doesn't know, I will just connect them and be like, go get a coffee. She lives in New York, so she's not here. Like they should have their own personal relationship too. And I also did this in music where when I managed songwriters and producers, I would make sure they were going to every single record label and every single kind of gatekeeper at the record label to make a real relationship with them, because that means that when that person's, you know, in the music industry, when they're, you know, putting together a session or they need a producer for something or a songwriter, they're going to think of them. And in this business, it's the same thing. If they're casting for creators for a campaign, if they have a personal relationship with a creator and they've met them, they're going to remember them before they remember all the other 100 people that they never met that are just people on the list. And I would love to see the industry move to like just be a bit more personable and a bit more in real life. And I think it's become so transactional because I think a lot of the industry, especially on TikTok, grew in COVID where everything was just on Zoom. And so they're kind of used to doing that and not used to doing in person. And I think the people that work in the industry, a lot of them are a lot younger too. So I think they're just kind of used to that more like digital interaction than maybe like my generation. I'm in my mid-30s. They're used to. But I think they need to see the value in like the real life, genuine relationships where you can actually, like when I do a meeting with someone, I don't really talk about work. I'll talk about, like, we'll chat about life for like 45 minutes and then we'll talk about work at the end. And it's like, okay, fine, we're friends now. So we'll email, we'll text and we'll talk about the work stuff. But like, let's actually build a connection and a relationship so we can actually be friends first before we get into the work stuff.
I hope we end there. I think another reason maybe we're not there yet is because, first of all, TikTok, they want to push, it feels like they want to push to create so many more content creators. You have a lot of small upcoming creators. And I think some brands feel like, why should I go with the bigger ones, pay and, you know, be with you? Instead I can go with like 10 or 100 of these transactional creators. It's just a campaign and they run it and they see the results. Sometimes that can feel like a more automated way, a volume game, than going with a few quality profiles where they need to kind of negotiate with you and the rates and everything. So there's a shift around that too. But when it comes to the rates, I'd love to hear your take on it because you're on the other side, like influencer rates, like how much you pay for, I guess, Instagram, TikTok, stories, whatever. It's becoming increased like higher and higher. But how do you guys price your product in a way? Like, because I know if you're a certain brand, you get this price. There's no price structure in this.
No, it's the absolute wild west out there, and you can literally just pull numbers out of you.
Yeah. So what's your take on that? When you give also the pricing to
with this creators that I work. So my company is actually only 6 months old. So with the creators that I work with, there we have only been taking on people that are already established and are already doing something and making money anyway. So our starting point always is, how much are you charging currently? So that's where we're always starting with our clients. So we have that kind of barometer, and then we set like a minimum price that we know that we will not go below this price. And then depending on what the agency brand, whatever it is, and I say brand very loosely because like we work with like, you know, film companies, we work with like Paramount, Netflix, whatever. So like, I don't know if we're calling it brands, but whatever the company is, like you can kind of gauge how much money they might have for a campaign. So you have your kind of base of this is the lowest that I'll go. But you kind of just try your luck, honestly, by being like, okay, I think they've got a lot of money and I've kind of seen it on the creators that they've used, and like you kind of just try and guess. And like it's a lot of a guessing game. We're just throwing out numbers, honestly, which I probably shouldn't admit, but I think everyone knows that. I think everyone knows that's
It's a game.
Oh, and that, yeah, it's just
a negotiating game.
it's just like, what's your budget? What's your rate? What's your budget? It's like that Spider-Man meme, with like the three Spider-Mans like all point at each other. It's like that. It's like, tell me what your budget is. But now what I do is I generally will ask, when I'm getting a brief from something, I would say, before I suggest any creators, can you give me just a vague budget range so I know? Because then I know that, like, if I'm not going to suggest creators that I know that's going to be below their range, basically. Right. So at least I get that, so I can get that type of range. And people are usually pretty good about giving a range. And the range could be quite big depending on like what they're looking for, obviously, because they might be looking for a mix of micros and macros. But that does help, at least. It helps us kind of like, we don't just go, you know, we're not just kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping something will stick by just like sending a bunch of creator ideas. Like, at least we can be a bit more tailored that way. But yeah, it's funny that there is no structure, and that you just kind of make it. I mean, you kind of just make it up.
Yeah,
it's just really interesting.
But does it ever happen that your creators feel like, you know, incoming inbound brand, and she's like, oh, I would love to work. I don't care about the price. Like, don't negotiate. Like, you feel like she or he does not want to lose that brand.
Yeah, definitely. It depends I think it depends like what the collaboration is. If it's something that's high profile, they'll definitely do it for less because they want to do something that's high profile. Yeah. They might not want to admit that they'll do it for less because obviously we want to get paid. But, you know, there's some things, if it's a huge brand, like people would, it looks good. It looks good on their CV basically to have worked with that brand, even if they're not getting paid as much. And I think like with us, it depends on the creator. Some creators are just like, I will not take less than this amount, and I will not do a deal that's less than this amount. It's not worth it to me. But some creators kind of, again, see the bigger picture, and they're like, well, this is my job. So yeah, I want to obviously try and stick to what my rate is as much as possible. But sometimes like I will take things that are less because, you know, it takes me an hour to film a video, film and edit, and I get paid £500 for an hour's worth of work. That's not bad. And so sometimes it depends on the creator. Sometimes we will pick up smaller things. Just if they're not like a huge heavy lifting project, we will pick up smaller ones as well.
Yeah. Is it possible to get a commission based deal with any of your 10 plus creators? I know they are maybe bigger, but is that common, or is it like a big note because it's too risky? What's your...
We do. Yeah, we are actually doing quite a few affiliate like commission type deals. Those tend to be with the smaller creators though. The bigger ones, or just, I think it's just also because the bigger ones, they're not really the types of people that would do something like that. It just so happens that the smaller ones are. But I think there's value in doing that. I think a happy medium would be like part payment, part commission. And it just depends how well that person can sell, honestly. Like if you've got a creator that you know can sell really well, they'll probably make more money off commission. And some of these companies have really great commission structures. So they could really make a lot, just depending on how good a salesperson they are and how influential they are to their audience to buy something. But I don't, and I know, again, like a lot of managers don't like that because they're not making that immediate return. But again, like that's also, a lot of brands want to test people out first by doing, giving them an affiliate link and seeing how well they convert. And then if they convert well, then it's like, okay, now I'm going to spend my money with you, because they're just being a lot smarter about how they spend their money. And I know like a few years ago, before I was even in this industry, like they would just throw money at creators, especially on TikTok when it was blowing up in COVID. And it's just not the same anymore. They're just getting more savvy and they're just being smarter about how they're spending their money. So, you have to respect that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shift. But when it comes to commission, if you want to give any, what's a great commission where you guys feel like, okay, our creators will be super happy. She will push more because of this commission rate. Or do you have any rates that are...
Yeah, give me 80%. Give me 80% commission. Sure, we'll push it every single day. I'm seeing like the average I'm seeing is like 20% commission, but then sometimes I'm seeing like they'll say you get X amount of money per sale, so it's just a fixed amount, and sometimes that amount's actually pretty good for the product. So yeah, like if they're saying you get 5% commission, it's not worth it. Even 10% is not really worth it. But I've not had anything like that. Everything you've had has been pretty reasonable so far.
As long as it works for the brand, like their own calculation, if that works out with the commission they're giving you, if it's 20, 30 or 50%, if they can give 50%, it makes sense for their own calculation, and you will be super rewarded. I mean, you will push that product like every single minute.
Exactly. And again, it depends on the type of creator. And a lot of the creators we work with, they're not really, that's kind of not what they do anyway. They do, like I said, like I had music, we have like kind of people do very different things. So that's not specifically what they do. But what we also actually, so you mentioned how many creators I have. So I have kind of two sides of my business. So I have one side where we have, we do 360 management, and I think we have 10 people signed on that side. But then we have another side of the company that acts more of an agency, and we have like a really big pool of creators. Like right now, I think it's about 80 people, but we're always growing it. And they're kind of people that are like in our network, that we have a more transactional relationship with, where we just bring deals or negotiate stuff for them as and when they need it. And that side is kind of more like, we are focused on like speaking to agencies, speaking to record labels, speaking to brands, and being like, what briefs have you got? And then we can send whatever 10 creators for that brief, just to make sure we always have something for that brief. Just thought it was worth mentioning that as well.
Nice. If we go back to TikTok, I just love to, you probably see so many viral TikTok videos from music labels. Have you seen, just being in the industry, have you seen any patterns or like why certain music just going viral?
You know, so we have no idea. I wish I had the answer to that. And if anyone has the answer, please tell me, because I don't know. I've like tried to, I'm sure there are people that are analyzing patterns, and I've not done that, but from being a consumer and also working in that side, like, I don't know, it's just so random. I think now the pattern is that obviously the more money you're spending on getting that song out there, the more people are going to see it, the more likely it is to go viral. The one thing I will say is, like, when a trend has started around a specific song, like that's when it's more likely to go viral. So if it's like a dance trend, even like the Jack Harlow one recently, that little like really easy dance trend that anyone could do, like that went viral. As a specific lyric that like really grabs people, like Tate McRae, Greedy, like that went incredibly viral just because of the lyrics of that, and like girls being like, oh, I can't wait for this song to come out. It's like Feral Girl Summer or whatever it was. Just those things that like grab people. But then you see random videos go viral, and I'm like, I don't really know. I have no idea why this went viral. It's so random.
But it's just I'm just curious, because I mean I had a talk a few weeks ago with someone that is also in the business and very focused on TikTok, and he said like it's a volume game. Like today TikTok doesn't even know themselves like what will work today. Tomorrow it's something else. So the game is basically test, do a lot of collaboration. You can never do like 5 or 10 and hope to.
No, you have to try and diversify the collaboration. And when I worked at the agency that I worked at, there was a influencer marketing agency for music. What we would do is we'd give out a few different creatives, and we would kind of A/B test the creatives, and then we'd see like which ones were doing best, and then we pivot and then focus more spend on that creative, and make sure that the creators we're going out to for that creative and doing that specific one that we know is going viral. It's a lot of A/B testing, and also making sure that, like, say for an artist, if you look at an artist audience, they don't just have like one specific type of person that's going to be their audience, right? They're going to have loads of different kind of sub audiences and like subcultures within those audiences. So for example, like if you're looking at like K-pop, you're going to have people who are into fashion. It's also like a very LGBTQ following for K-pop. But then you have people that are into anime. Then you have people that are into like Wattpad and like things like that. And so it's like, how are we going to tap into every single one of these subcultures, and how are we going to create content that's related to the song, but it's going to resonate with all of these different subcultures? And that's a really important part of like trying to market music. And like, again, like it's just diversifying and making sure like you're hitting as many different places as possible, so you have more chances of going viral.
Sure. And and that's like kind of like a final question. I'm curious. I know you wrote about this on LinkedIn, but what's your tips on, I guess, for brands, just their own organic TikTok? Like, how can they grow it? What's your tips? Do you have any concrete tips?
Yeah, I would say, interestingly, like I've started doing these like social media audits for like brands and individuals as well, that it's just like, I don't know what's going on my TikTok, but nothing's happening, and on their Instagram too. And like, please tell me what to do. And the like number one thing that I tend to say is like be more relatable, show the behind the scenes. Like don't just show like this is my product. Like show the people behind the product. Like look at like Sheerluxe, for example. They're obviously not a brand, but like they are going completely viral all the time because like they've just made another account just for the people that work at Sheerluxe, and they've like built this following in themselves. And it's like that's smart because that's just built that brand up. I hadn't honestly, I'm not like a huge fashion person, so I hadn't beauty, whatever. I just don't really read those types of things. So I hadn't even heard of them until I saw that this content that they were making was doing really well with like the people in the office. So it doesn't have to specifically be that, but it could be like show the processes behind things, like show the people behind things. If you're a restaurant, like let's talk to the chefs, let's see how they're making the food. Like I want to see the behind the scenes so I can really connect with that brand on more of a personal level, because like these days people really do, because of TikTok, because of like how in depth it is and how you kind of get to see everything. People want to connect on a deeper level with everything, even a brand. Like how there's so many brands out there. There's so many, like I said, if you're a restaurant, there's so many restaurants out there. How are you making people care about your one? Obviously, it's having good food and having people talk about how good the food is. But if you want to actually focus on your specific page and how you're attracting people, like tell a story. Tell a story. Don't just show pictures of your food and be like, yeah, this is cool. Like we're open from 10 to 6. Like you need to give just a bit more than that and bring that kind of personal angle. So that's the thing that comes up the most when I speak to people, when I speak to brands, companies, etc., about their content when they feel super stuck. Just being more personal.
Yeah, I think I can see it. I think all the brands that I follow that kind of, that are very successful.
Yeah.
Just looking at their feed, it doesn't look like a shopping feed, you know?
No.
It's like sometimes it's about something else, and it's about something today that happened today and relate to it. So yeah, it's kind of like following a creator in a way.
It's always, exactly, it's providing value. And the way that, you know, I think before TikTok became what it is and we just had Instagram, like Instagram, it provided value in some way, but a lot of it was just like pretty pictures. And yes, it influenced people to want to buy something or go somewhere or whatever. But TikTok is really, and YouTube as well, to be fair, is like really adding value to people's lives. They're learning something. And now people are just used to that. It's not about the content. Even if you're a brand, if you're a creator, whatever it is, like it should never be I. It should always be like, how can I help you? How am I influencing you? How am I making your life easier? And that's what it should be. That's what brands should be thinking about as well when they're creating their content. It's like, what value are they giving? Apart from just trying to sell something, what value are they giving to the customer, to the person that's following them?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess they should just think like a creator.
Yeah,
in a way.
Exactly. Just think exactly. Pretty much.
Nice. But it was super fun talking to you. And extra fun to hear about the music industry, TikTok.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it, but now I know a little bit more, or a lot more than before. But yeah, thanks for jumping on this call.
Of course, it was really fun. I could talk about the music industry for days, and also the creator industry. It's just they're both such fascinating industries. And the way they cross over as well is especially right now with what's going on. It's just very interesting time right now.
Yeah, for sure.